Should the Second Amendment never have been passed? Well, our country as a whole shouldn't exist, so yes, it should never have
Oh,
been passed. Europeans of any kind should never have taken it upon themselves to rule in a land that wasn't theirs. But laying that aside, I wish the Founding Fathers had put a lot more care into the language of the Second Amendment. I know it's not reasonable to expect that the Founding Fathers would understand the future of weaponry, but they could have been more specific in describing the type of firearm that they were actually talking about, instead of leaving it open for interpretation. But again, setting that aside, we could fix it today. We should be a whole lot less concerned about what a small group of white men thought 200 years ago, and more concerned about what a wide swath of citizens want today.
okay. So there's a lot to unpack here from our friend who you may recognize from past segments is kind of one of the OGs of TikTok terrible takes. She gives us so much to work with, and for that, we do have to be grateful. But it is wild to hear someone with the audacity to say America should not exist, while being an American, sitting in one of the most free and prosperous societies to ever exist in all of human history, enjoying all the benefits of that, and then having the audacity to say our country should not exist. Girl, get the out then. Go somewhere else. We should deport you. We can voluntarily deport yourself, and then we can take your citizenship and give it to some immigrant who wants to come here and work hard and love our country. I hate this attitude. I think our country is flawed and imperfect in a lot of ways, but the core is beautiful and good. And the problem is we haven't always lived up to it. Not that we, as at our core, are bad or somehow shouldn't exist. I find that attitude and idea totally wrong-headed and honestly revolting. I mean, by this logic that, well, the US, was formed by colonists who took land from Native Americans. Oh, so a country that was formed through some form of conquest or taking of land has no right to exist, then, babe, most modern countries can't exist by that logic. It's just, unfortunately, that was the way of the world for many centuries and millennia. So obviously, a lot of what was done to the Native American people was wrong, and it should have been done very differently. And we should have incorporated them into the societies that were being built, and we should have respected their autonomy and allowed them to self-govern in more ways and have their own territories, and maybe built the country around the parts that were occupied. I mean, huge swaths of it were totally unoccupied, to be clear, and they didn't really have the same concepts of property ownership that we did. So there's nothing to this notion that the whole continent was just off limits, already claimed. Like, that's ridiculous. But we certainly shouldn't have, and I shouldn't say we, because obviously none of us had anything to do with it, but like the original colonists should not have killed them or given them smallpox blankets or any of the evil things that were done. Though unfortunately, a vast majority of the deaths were honestly just caused by diseases and the bringing over of germs and bacteria and diseases that their immune systems weren't able to handle because they had been totally separated from European society and everything else. And while some of that was obviously worsened by the horrific things that were done, like giving of smallpox blankets and kind of purposefully using diseases as a weapon, a huge amount of death and despair was kind of inevitable when these civilizations met, simply because of those biological factors. But of course, I'm going on a tangent here, but of course, it should have been handled totally differently. And a lot of terrible things were done. But that doesn't change the fact that those people went on to create and lay the foundations for one of the most free and prosperous human civilizations ever known to mankind. And that is still ultimately a good thing. I genuinely don't understand the kind of short-termism or historical ignorance and illiteracy it requires to believe that the US is somehow fundamentally bad or shouldn't exist. Like, can you not understand that as an American in the year of our Lord 2024, you have rights and freedoms and opportunities that even now 95+% of the world would envy, but in the broader context of human history, of all of mankind, you are in the 99.99 percentile of most privileged and blessed people ever to be in this country. And yet we have people like this who disdain it and honestly want to tear it all up. And I I find that completely alien and completely baffling. And the analysis of the Second Amendment in this TikTok is just laughably ignorant. Like, of course, the founding fathers didn't specifically list what weaponry they meant to protect, because that wasn't the point. The idea was to enshrine a concept, a constitutional right to self-defense with commonly available weaponry that would then carry on through the centuries as weaponry evolved. The same way the First Amendment, this person would surely agree, protects their TikTok account and the internet, even though, of course, the founding fathers couldn't have imagined the new forms of speech that technology would bring to us. So to say, this whole, well, they only could have imagined muskets when they wrote that on paper, betrays a total ignorance of how the founders viewed the Constitution as establishing a set of ideals and principles to then be applied to the future, not outlining specific laws that were to govern the US for all of its future. Of course not. And there's actually the most scary part of this video is when this person seems to suggest that simple majority rule should somehow override our Constitution and our Bill of Rights. It's totally civically illiterate, because the very point of the Bill of Rights attached to our Constitution is to serve as a guard against the dangers of the tyranny of the majority, of unfettered pure democracy. Some things are supposed to be off limits, particularly individual rights. Because if all you need is 51% of the public or 60% of the public to agree on something, and then it's okay to violate individual rights, like the freedom of speech or like the right to bear arms in self-defense, then you don't actually have rights at all. And it's funny to hear people like this say this, because they of all should know. I mean, this person has insanely radical takes on many things that probably less than 10% of Americans would agree with. Yet their right to say those takes and not be squelched or shut down is protected by the First Amendment, which is anti-democratic, anti-majoritarian. Yet she seems to think that the majority rule should just override that. Babe, you would literally be on the wrong end of that equation on many issues. Honestly, videos like this take me back to a common theme I've said for a long time. We have a desperate issue of civic and constitutional illiteracy in our country, and we need to really reinstate and reinforce civics education in this country. So many people are ignorant. Some people don't understand our Constitution, our founders, the framing of our system of government, and it shows, especially on TikTok, but just honestly all around us in general life, it shows. Well, what do you guys think of this video? And do you agree with me about the need for more civic education? Do let me know in the comments, and don't forget to hit that like button to reward my suffering through the depths of stupidity that I'm constantly stumbling into on TikTok.